We're all coming out of a dark period, and no one knows more about the dark times than Bass-Baritone Ryan Speedo Green.
How cool is that to be an artist in residence for opera and be able to speak to people in juvenile detention centers and facilities? And I got to speak with them about my time in juvenile detention and my journey afterwards, which I think is the most important part.
We'll talk about how he's looking back to move forward as he continues his ascent into opera stardom. And there are more good intentions happening all over the place, including in Eugene, Oregon.
We just have an interest in that relationship between education, music, the arts, and our people. And we know that music is close to the African peoples.
From the Second Street Dreams Audio Network, this is the June 2021 edition of Classical Music in Color. Music, news, and information about and for people of color in classical music. And it's Black Music Month. I'm your host, Judelyn Gibson. The first thing I want to say is thank you, all of you who have been listening to Classical Music in Color. I appreciate your spending time listening and learning about BIPOC classical musicians and their walk through that world. Thank you very much. We start the program with Ryan Speedo Green, the bass baritone you've heard about, I'm sure. That's him singing La Coluna from The Barber of Seville some years ago at the Florida State Opera. I spoke to him over Zoom while he was working as the first ever artist in residence for the newly formed Texas Opera Alliance.
I go by Speedo. Only my mom calls me Ryan when she's mad at me, so please call me Speedo, so I know you're not mad at me.
Now, Speedo, is Speedo is it your real middle name?
Yes, Speedo's my real middle name. I was born on April Fool's Day, and I'm one of 5 boys of my father. And my mom wanted a girl, obviously. I did not come out a girl. So my dad got to name me, and at the time, he was a aspiring amateur bodybuilder. And so he named me after his favorite underwear as a joke on April Fool's Day.
Oh. Have you ever been an artist in residence before?
I think this is like my 6th artist in residence that I've done thus far in my short career thus far, and I'm just very blessed that I'm having the ability to and the opportunity to share my experiences, my talents, and my point of view on operatic performance and education. I spoke to some of the youth that were I don't want to say incarcerated, but who are residents at the facility. Let's put it that way. And I got to speak with them about my time in juvenile detention and my journey afterwards, which I think is the most important part. You know, how I was able to find ways to get myself not only right in the head, but also to put focus to my emotions in productive ways. I think that's how cool is that to be an artist in residence for opera and be able to speak to people in juvenile detention centers and facilities about my path.
Green knows from whereof he speaks because he was the angry kid in juvenile detention.
My story is a story of educators and the American dream. And what really is the American dream, and both the bad and the good, and also about mental health and the stigma of mental health in the African American community, and especially with men. And there's a huge stigma on confronting mental health and talking about it and fixing it, and as well as my story is a story of a village. It takes a village. And not only for my personal life, but for my voice. Without the educators who went the extra mile, who, instead of putting me in a box and making me a percentage number, which, again, you would have, knowing me as a child, you would have been absolutely justified in doing so, because I gave you every reason to put me in a box and to make me a stereotype or a percentage number of, African-American men, young men who go in and out of juvenile detention, end up in jail, like 2 of my older brothers. 2 of my older brothers are felons. And I was headed very much on the same path in a different way, but ended up in the same path, and I didn't. And it was compassion from strangers that allowed me to see in myself what I wasn't able to see on my own.
Even you must have been like the first time you were on an opera stage singing a role, getting the role, learning how to pronounce it, and then being on stage with an audience applauding you, enthusiastically. That must have been such a fantastic feeling.
Well, I will tell you, it did not start off that way. My first experience singing in front of an audience, I was 14, 15, and we did this thing at I went to a magnet school for the arts. I'd gotten in by singing the Star Spangled Banner a cappella and Caro Mio Ben, which is an Italian art song, also a cappella. And it really wasn't, I didn't really get in on my talent. I sort of got in, I found out later on that I got in because the principal of the school was the husband of the educator I mentioned before who helped change my life. Her husband was the head of this music school, and it just so happened that he made an initiative that he wanted it to be more diverse and inclusive, all the districts in southeastern Virginia, and he wanted each school to be represented in the magnet school. And so I would just happen to be one of very few males wanting to even auditioning for the voice, classic voice program, as well as being, African American, which was extremely rare to be auditioning for the classic voice program. And when I got in, we had this thing called Death by Aria, where you had to get in front of your peers, which if anybody knows about performing, it's actually much easier to sing in front of 1,000 strangers than to sing into 5 people that you actually know. And I come on about to sing Caro Mio Ben. And I walk on stage, and the pianist, his name is Robert Brown, and he eventually would become my mentor and my father figure. He started playing the intro to Caro Mio Ben, and I'm standing there looking into the audience to my peers, and he gets about a measure before I have to sing. And then I realize at that measure that, I'm probably not going to open my mouth. I'm probably just going to stand here till he starts playing, and then he's just going to give up, and then I'm going to walk off stage, and this nightmare is going to be over. And so it gets to the bar of when my entrance is coming, and I had made that decision, mentally. Actually, my body had made it for me that I wasn't going to sing. And so I just stayed there, like a deer in the headlights, looking to the audience as he started to play where I was supposed to come in. And I was like, okay, yeah, now he's going to give up and he's just going to stop playing. But instead, he went back a measure to where a bar before I had to come in and started vamping my entrance and in hopes that I would, reconsider my, not singing. And my body's like, no, there's no reconsidering. We're in this. This is how it's going to go. And so we kept revamping. And it was about 30 seconds in that he was like, okay, so if you're not going to sing, I'm going to sing. And so Mr. Brown started singing my part for me as I came in. And I just stood there looking into the audience, hoping that he would just finish the piece and it would be over. And yeah, that was my first experience with singing in front of my peers on stage. And to think that literally a year after that, I had a completely different experience. And it took many, many, many crashes and burns and failures for me to get to that moment. A year later, we did a spring concert. And it was my first time singing in front of an audience in a solo. This is not in front of my peers. This is in front of my mother, which is even worse. Oh. And she's in the audience. And I'm singing this piece called If Ever I Would Leave You from Camelot. And this is a love song that Lancelot sings, I think about Guinevere. Yeah. And I've been practicing this piece for months with Mr. Brown, and to the point where I could almost do it on autopilot, where I didn't have to think about it. I just would open my mouth, and the things would come out that were supposed to come out. I see my mom in the audience, of course, because, again, I'm one of very few Black people in Government School for the Arts, so my mom sticks out like a sore thumb, and she's very close to the stage. So, no pressure, and I'm getting ready to sing this piece that I've been working on for months, and I was thinking to myself, Speedo, just don't think, just sing. Do what Mr. Brown says. And so I went on autopilot. I can't even tell you how I sounded or what I did, but somehow the song ended, and I ended on the note that I was supposed to end on. And after I was done, I expected just to walk off and it would be over. But instead, my mom gets up and starts screaming, "That's my son!" and starts clapping and applauding, and everybody else starts applauding with her, bravoing me. And I'm like, "What just happened? Like, who? Like, they can't be doing this for me." And I walked off stage, and Mr. Brown grabbed me and he said, "Boy, you better always sing like that."
Between then and now, Ryan Speedo Green of Suffolk, Virginia, received a bachelor's from the Hart School of Music in Connecticut and a Master of Music degree from Florida State University. In addition, he sung at the Met, among many other international opera houses. Many classical music organizations and others have upped their diversity quotient. This includes the Baytown, Texas Symphony, naming its first black conductor. There's also a petition demanding a memorial to Beethoven's African violinist. Then there's the Eugene Symphony in Oregon. That's their 2018 performance of the Four Seasons of the Mackenzie River, highlighting the beautiful nature of the waterway. Very few of their musicians are black or BIPOC, and that is one reason the Eugene Symphony has partnered with the region's NAACP for a program of private lessons for middle and high school students.
My name's Katie Bisbal, Education and Community Engagement Director at the Eugene Symphony.
And you, sir?
My name is Eric Richardson, Executive Director of the Eugene Springfield NAACP.
Katie, tell me, what is the program?
It's a new private lesson program, and it was really started as something that came into fruition from the pandemic. So as you know, the pandemic has really disproportionately affected professional musicians. When venues shut down, musicians are out of work. And it was really a matter of like, well, can we pivot? How are we going to adapt? So the lesson program is one way that we can safely provide work opportunities to our musicians, because all of the lessons take place online. They're all happening virtually via Zoom. And it also allows us to continue to fulfill our mission, our education mission, to serve local students. And so the lesson program is a private lesson scholarship consisting of 8 free lessons with a Eugene Symphony musician, teaching artist. And through our partnership with the NAACP, we had a special scholarship specifically for BIPOC students. So we were able to give out 19 scholarships for BIPOC students to participate. And that's 19 of the 42 students that are participating in the program this year.
The whole idea is that as a member of the NAACP in Eugene Springfield, I became aware of the AXO program, which is a national program of the NAACP that encourages excellence in our African-American youth through competitions. So we just have an interest in that relationship between education, music, the arts, and our people. And we know that music is close to the African peoples in the Americas. And so we just want to inculcate that kind of idea in our kids and whatnot. And so I think therefore, over years, it seems like now, Katie, we've had different opportunities to interact and to have the NAACP and the Eugene Symphony have opportunities to get together. I mean, the symphony has reached out to us and given opportunities to the youth to come to shows and whatnot, and we were gladly willing to participate and getting them there. So that's really the beginnings of that relationship.
Keep in mind that only 3% of the state of Oregon's population is Black. It's the same for Native Americans, but the Latino population is 12% and growing. Katie Visdahl of the Eugene Symphony and Eric Richardson of the Lane County, Oregon NAACP hope that the lesson program and others will add a little more color in local classical music groups in the years to come. There's a few more of these diversity initiatives posted on the Classical Music in Color page with links on secondstreetdreams.com. You can also find a new composer's cadenza. It's about 2 award-winning composers who used a unique way to make their music. Look for it under Stories of Interest. Our coda this month is a big thank you to all the people who've been brave enough to get vaccinated. This helps us all return to, if not normal, at least a new normal. More vaccinated people means those concert halls can open sooner rather than later. There's also a big thank you to the scientists, researchers, the doctors, and nurses who've worked tirelessly to keep us alive and as healthy as possible. Have you gotten your shots? Some of the music you heard on this podcast is from the 101 Strings Orchestra, God Mode, Dan Bowden, and Chad Serwick Hughes. Thank you all. I'm Judelyn Gibson. We're the Second Street Dreams audio network on the radio and on the WWW. Thank you for listening to the June 2021 edition of Classical Music in Color.